I watch a lot of entrepreneurs nowadays who they're so scared of failing that they'll never take the first step.
Brunson, entrepreneur, author, marketing genius, started ClickFunnels, the fastest growing non-venture backed tech startup in the world. ClickFunnels grew from $0 to $100 million in just 3 years. Unbelievable.
Entrepreneurship is a crazy journey of ups and downs and then ups and then more downs. And it's just the nature of the career we all signed up for. My first time growing a company, I was new, I was young and probably hired too fast. At that point, we had about 100 employees. I had no way to process money and I owed $200,000. I was gonna go to jail. 40, 50, 60 people who I thought were like my friends just left. And I was like, I wanna quit, but I can't because I'll go to jail.
How do you scale from 0 to 100 million?
I always tell people, I'm like,
So Russell, first of all, so glad to have you here. Been watching you and binge watching your stuff for many, many years.
I appreciate that. Well, I'm excited to be here too. This will be so much fun.
It'll be so much fun. But you were drawn to marketing and sales from a very young age. Can you take us back in time?
How far back do you want to go? No,
child collecting stuff. I want to go all the way back.
All right. That's the best story. So yeah, when I was, I don't know, like my dad was an entrepreneur. So I kind of saw him. He was always hustling, doing side businesses, but it didn't really cross my mind. And then I remember one night, I think I was like 12 or 13 years old, and my parents always watched the news, and then my mom would go to bed and my dad would sit there working for a couple more hours. And usually they'd make me like, Russell, go to bed. So I'd have to go to bed at night. And I remember one night, my mom went to bed and my dad, I don't know if he didn't know I was in the room, but he didn't make me go to bed. He was just working. So I was like, I watched the news with him. The news got done and then MASH came on and we watched MASH. I was like, I'm watching MASH with my dad. This is so cool. And then MASH ended and then all of a sudden this thing popped up. And I had no idea what it was. I now know it's an infomercial, but there's Infomercial and there was this guy on it named Don Lepre. And he was like me times 1,000, like so much energy. He was so excited. And he's like, talking about how you can make money, make money with tiny classified ads. And I still remember he's like, I placed an ad in a newspaper and it made $30. And all my friends and family made fun of me, but I took that same ad and I placed it in 1,000 newspapers and made $30,000. And I was like, my 12-year-old brain's like, what? Like, I was totally freaking out. I was looking at my dad. I was like, Dad, you have to buy this. And my dad was like, whatever, like just kind of making fun of me. And I remember it got to the call to action where call this 1-800 number and you can get you can buy the course for $40 or something. And so I remember writing the number down. I'm like, Dad, you got to call. He's like, we're not going to buy this. So I was like, Dad, I have to have it. And they had like some bonus, like you bought in the next 5 minutes, you got this other free gift. So I was like, we have to hurry, Dad, and he told me no. And the next morning I was so mad. He's like, look, if you want that, you can earn the money to go buy it. So I was like, okay, how do I earn the money? He's like, okay, if you start mowing the lawns, I'll pay you, I can't remember, $5 a week or something. So I started mowing his lawn, other people's lawns. In about a month, I'd earned the $40 I needed to buy it. And so I remember telling my dad, I was like, I have the phone number, but we have to call during the infomercial so we get the free gift. And so he let me stay that night. We watched news and we watched MASH, and then the show came up and it came up again. And so as soon as it got to the part where they said, call now, get the special bonus, we called and my dad bought it with the credit card. And it was the coolest thing in the world. And I got the kit in the mail. In fact, I still have it to this day. I'm going to frame it or something. It's really cool. But I was like reading the books and I just that was my entrance into business. And it was anyway, the funnest, the most fun thing in the world. And then for me, it's these ideas in my head about how you can make money. All of a sudden, you can't stop thinking about it. Right. And I remember my mom and I were at the grocery store and there was a magazine there. They still sell magazines called Small Biz Op Magazine. There's all these cartoons on it. So I'm like, Mom, will you buy this magazine for me? So she bought me the magazine. And I remember in the magazine, if you ever get a copy, next time you're at the grocery store, Barnes & Noble, you can get one. It's 140 pages of ads and then 4 pages of articles. And every ad is a different way to make money. And so I remember reading it. One of them was you can make donuts at the county fair and make money. And then they call this phone number for the free info kit. So I'm like, call the number, send me a free info kit. And the next page was you can make money by painting glow-in-the-dark stars on people's roofs. Call the number for the free info kit. So I called the number for free info kit. Next page is you can make money selling gold chains by the inch. So I call every 144 info kits. I go and I order for every one of these businesses. It was funny now. I was in a funnel. I didn't know it, right? But the info kit shows up and all the info kit is a sales letter, then selling the $100 version of it, right? Or whatever. So then you'd call it anyway. And there's the whole thing. But as a 12-year-old kid, I would sit there at night. I would get home from school and there'd be a stack of junk mail this big. And I would sit there, I'd read all these sales letters about all these ways to make money and completely ruined me for life. But that's kind of how I started my young entrepreneur journey.
Oh my God. And again, like most people are just not as driven, or kids, they're just not as driven. Like I don't know what made you so driven to collect these things and get curious about it. Um
Yeah.
and you also loved wrestling. And actually you were like state champion in high school, and you had this like massive passion continue to do you think this shaped you also to who you are today, that driven, I can get back up?
Yeah, I think for a lot of, I mean, definitely as a young age, I didn't realize the time, but definitely was very driven for the business thing. Like I don't dabble in something. If I get excited, like I go all in. I'm so excited. When I started wrestling, it was the same thing. I remember wrestling, and as soon as I won my very first match, and I got my hand raised, I was like, that feeling, I want that again. So I like started running, and so for the next like 8 years of my life, that's all I focused on was wrestling. And then when I got done with my wrestling career, it's when I found out about the online business, and I jumped into that. And I think all those things like kind of compound. Like you learn how to work hard, you learn how to be driven, you learn like how to overcome. Sports are so great for that. Like you learn how to lose and then not give up. I watch a lot of entrepreneurs nowadays who they're so scared of failing that they'll never take the first step, right? They'll listen to the podcast and they'll read the book and they love learning about it, but they're so scared. Like if they take that step and if it fails, then their dream dies, right? So because of that, they get stuck in this learning loop forever. I think for me, it's because I'd stepped on the wrestling mat 100 times a year and I didn't win a lot of them. It's like I would lose, and then an hour later back on the mat again, the back on the mat, and like next weekend again. And so it's like I got good at learning. Like if I lose, it doesn't mean I'm a loser. I have to learn something from it, right? Like I think the best example of this, my junior year, my goal was to be a state champ. And the very first match of the year, I wrestled a guy who'd taken second state the year before. And I remember I lost to him. And it was like so painful. I told everyone all summer long, I'm going to be a state champ. It's going to be amazing. And my very first match, I lost. And I remember my dad, and my dad's again, very entrepreneurial as well, but he got the videotape of me losing and he watched it over and over. Like he used, like that night I lost, he watched it probably 100 times. And next morning I woke up, he's like, okay, I know how to beat this kid. And so on the carpet, we would drill how to beat him. And then that day when practice got done, my dad would show up and we drilled again. We drilled it for 4 months. I drilled it. And then come 4 months later, it was a state tournament, and I ended up wrestling that same kid in the finals, and I ended up beating him with the same move he'd beaten me with, because I drilled it so many times, I knew how to do it, right? But it's like, I think that's carried over into entrepreneurship, because like entrepreneurship, like I create offers all the time that I launch and they fail. And I'm in like most people that would cripple them. For me, it's just like, okay, well, I failed. Like, what do we got to tweak? Okay, let's change the headline. Let's change, keep tweaking until it works. I think that's what people understand. A lot of times they give up on their business and it's just like a couple tweaks away from having success, right? They give up on their athletic career where it's just like, you're a couple tweaks away from like hitting your dreams. And so anyway, I think those things helped me a lot in my, from athletics, helped me in the entrepreneur world.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly what you talk about, right? Like a lot, it's so easy to stop 3 feet from gold, right? Like it's just, because fear will is numbing. So fear will take more dreams than anything. But you somehow started this entrepreneurship endeavor, I don't know, like, back in college, and you did all these like super crazy, innovative potato guns, and like, can you take us back in time? Like, how did that, like, I remember the first time when I saw this, I'm like, rewind. Am I sure that this is what he actually meant? Yes, that's what he actually meant. Russell, take us there for a second.
Yeah. So when I got into college and I met my wife, we got engaged, and she was working after we got married. Like she was working to support us, and I felt guilty because I wanted to wrestle, but I also felt like I should help support. And so I was trying to figure out a way to make money. And it's interesting because back then I was like trying to study. There were a lot of people online doing it, but there were a few people doing online. In fact, one of them is Frank Kern, who a lot of guys know him nowadays. But he had this product. It was called the Underachiever Method, and it was like how to make really simple products. And I remember he had like one teaching how to do dog training, one like how to teach a parrot how to talk, and one how to do like all these little niche products. And they create these little ebooks, and then they would go and they would buy Google ads to sell them. And it was just like this really simple process. And I remember going through the course. I was like, this is so cool. But I was like, what am I going to, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know how to teach a parrot how to talk, or how to, I don't know how to do those kind of things. And so I was kind of stuck trying to think what I would actually do. And then I remember I was in college, and it was like spring break, and my buddy was like, hey, Russell, we should go shoot potato guns. I'm like, what's a potato gun? So he told me. And so during spring break, we went online and we found all the potato gun plans and how to make a potato gun. We went to the Home Depot and bought the pipes and cut them up. And, we made these potatoes and then potato guns and we shot them. And like all weekend long, we had so much fun with it. And then next Monday I was back in school and I was like, I wonder if I could create like a product teaching people what we just learned, like how to make potato guns. And so that was kind of the idea. And so we went and we borrowed a video camera from someone and we filmed ourselves going through the whole process of buying the pipes, gluing them together, making potato guns, shooting them. And then that became my very first product I created and put out there on the internet. Looks like we're frozen. I'm not sure if I'm frozen or you frozen.
I think something went off, so I'll ask them to edit it out. But oh my God, yeah, sorry about that. I don't know what happened with Riverside. Yeah, so I missed you, but I missed the college endeavor. I'm so bummed.
Will it still show up? How does Riverside work? Will it still show up?
Yeah,
or should I,
it's
want me
gonna
to
be
tell it again?
local. Yeah, it's gonna be local. So if you answered it, we're all good.
Okay, cool.
I'll just make sure that they know. I just didn't hear it. Sorry about that.
Right. No worries.
Yeah, the good news is that it's always on your side. So it's all, we're just gonna edit it out. But okay, restart. So you share, and I found that super inspiring, that someone helped you break that 4-minute mile. And you have this beautiful story about, how you broke the first million for yourself, et cetera, et cetera. Can you share a little bit of that, Russell?
Yeah, for sure. So when I got started my online business, I'd never set a goal to make $1 million. Like, that wasn't my goal. I was just trying to figure out how to make some money so my wife wouldn't have to work. Like, that was kind of how we started, right? With the potato gun, and then I made other little products. And then I remember, we'd been married about a year. And I remember because we were on a family reunion, and I remember it was at this lake where there's no internet access. And I remember going to the library to check my email. I'm sitting in this little library in this lake town with nothing else around. I open my email, and there's an email in there from this guy named John Reese, and it says something like, "We did it," or something was the subject line. I'm like, "Did what?" And I open the email, and he's like, "Hey, earlier today we launched a course called Traffic Secrets." And he's like, it's $1,000 course. And in the first 18 hours, we sold 1,000 copies, which means we're the very first people to ever make $1 million online in a day selling a course. And I was like, what? And I remember sitting there in a chair and I was just like so perplexed. Like, my goal was like maybe in my lifetime to make $1 million. I'm like, there's a guy who's just like me, a couple years older than me, who made $1 million in a day. And I was like, he can't be that much smarter than me, right? Like if he can do that, like, could I do that? And I was doing the math in my head. Like, I was like, he had $1,000 course. He sold 1,000 copies. I'm like, it's just math. Like, how do I sell 1,000 copies of $1,000 product, right? And so that started my wheels, my head spinning. So I remember setting a goal. I was like, okay, because I didn't believe it. I'm like, I don't think I can do $1 million in a day, but can I do $1 million in a year? Like, I was like, if I had $1,000 course, if I sell 3 a day, that would be $1 million in a year. So I was like, okay. So that was kind of the thing. So I went and my very first thing I did is like, I need to make $1,000 course just like this guy did. It was my very first time I funnel hacked somebody, right? Before we called it that. And so I went and I put together an event. I recorded it. I made my first $1,000 course. I remember I launched on January 1st because like everyone on New Year's Day will want to change their life. Little did I know everyone was going to be drunk January 1st, and the launch went horrible. Like, the whole entire launch, we sold 20 copies of my $1,000 course. And that was like, I was like, oh, it kind of like, it was devastating, but I kept trying. And like the first year I got close. I can't remember, like $600,000 or $700,000 that first year, but then I missed it by December. I'm like, okay, January 1st, I'm starting over, setting the goal. And I tried it again that year. I got close again, missed it again. And that third year I kept going and going. And I didn't know which product was going to sell, which offer. So I kept just putting out different offers, different things. And then it was crazy. There was this interview I did with a guy. His name was Vince James. And he was an old school, like, direct mail guy. And he'd made $100 million through direct mail selling supplements. And I interviewed him for like he wrote a book, and for some reason he let me interview him. And this was like 2 or 3 years earlier. I was like a college kid at the time. He let me interview him for 6 hours. So I asked him all these questions about how he did it. And so again, 3 years later, I'm sitting there. I'm like, what's the next offer I could sell? And I was like, what if I sold the interviews that I did with Vince? Like, that was a really cool interview. Like, maybe someone will buy that. And so we took that interview. We sold it for $37. And then the guy, Vince, that I interviewed, he had sold licensing rights to his book. It was a $300 book. So I bought the license to this book. And so I had someone bought the interview for $37 and we'd upsell them a copy of the book for $297. And so the book was called The 12-Month Millionaire. So I own 12monthinternetmillionaire.com. We launched this whole thing, right? Put the launch out there. And in 7 days, that funnel crossed $1 million. And that was the first one I'd ever had. And I was just like, this is insane. I interviewed a person, I laid the access to the interview, and we sold $1 million. Like, it was the craziest thing in the world for me. And so that was the first time I'd actually done it. And but it was interesting because I think the reason why a lot of people never make $1 million is they never try to make $1 million, right? Like, it wasn't until I was like, okay, I'm going to try to do it. This is the goal. And I started working towards that like all of the things kind of showed up for me to be able to do that. I think in ClickFunnels, one of the things we did is we created the 2 Comma Club Awards. So it's like, I want to give people, I want to give them something to shoot towards. Like when, in anything, it's like when I was wrestling before I knew I wanted to be state champ, I was just kind of there doing the things. When I realized I want to be a state champ, I had something to shoot towards, and I became really good. I think the same thing with this. And so that's why we created the 2 Comma Club Awards, to give people like something, okay, this is the goal. And then when they have a goal, you can reverse engineer it and you can figure it out. But for me, that was, as soon as I had that goal, then it was like everything to try to pursue that. And that's how I learned all the stuff I had to learn to make it possible. So yeah, one of my favorite stories.
I love that story. And again, we have our Millionaires Club, we have the President Club, because again, I want people to see what's possible, right? If you don't even know what's possible, you're still stuck with that. Like, I'm just trying to do this, like, move from senior manager to senior manager, I'm like, come on, there's more to life. Let's go.
Right? It's all about leaping, right?
So, but yeah, you share at some point, you have the most brilliant videos. Folks, if you didn't see that, just go to, you're revamping your YouTube channel, although I always thought it was very revamped, but go to Russell's YouTube channel. Like, his videos, to me, it's just so inspiring. It's so beautiful. And you share so much with so much vulnerability and truth. But you share one of the hardest moments when you needed to lay off a lot of your team and, just kind of rebuild. And I think it's just so important to listen to that too, because there's always going to be, like we said, challenges and things and setbacks and things that will, hurt you to your core, but you somehow continue. Can you share that a little bit?
For sure, yeah. I think it's unfortunate that most entrepreneurs only share like the highlight reel of people and don't talk about the downsides. And I was the same way. I was very nervous for a long time to share those things, and I started sharing some of them, and so many people were like, wow, like, that makes me feel so much better. I'm going through that same thing as well. In fact, to set up that story, it's kind of funny. During this time when everything was like falling apart around me, I got invited to this little mastermind meeting in Mexico, and I was sitting next to this guy who's crazy rich, crazy expensive. And he asked me my story, and I was like, oh, so I was kind of telling him, the highlights. He's like, no, tell me your real story. I was like, well, and I told Mr. I'm going to tell you right now how bad everything was and everything. And he was like, okay, cool. He's like, so you cycled once. I'm like, what? He's like, I'll never work with an entrepreneur unless they've cycled at least once. He's like, because otherwise they still believe their own, they still believe their own bio, they're still drinking their own Kool-Aid. And I was like, oh, that feels a lot better. I just cycled. Like, all entrepreneurs cycle. Like, okay, like, so it reframed it for me, and hopefully it'll reframe for some of you guys, because like entrepreneurship is a crazy journey of ups and downs, and then ups and then more downs, and it's just the nature of of the career we all signed up for. But so what happened is it was my first time like growing a company, and I was new, I was young, and I started hiring people, probably hired too fast. At that point, we had about 100 employees. We had this building downtown Boise, Idaho. It was like really, really cool. And like, I felt like I was on top of the world. Again, I believed my own bio. I was drinking my own Kool-Aid. I thought it was so great. And then one day, it was in January, just one day, all of a sudden, like someone was trying to buy something, and the merchant account failed, and the merchant account failed, and then another one failed. And we had 9 merchant accounts. What I learned later, I had 9 merchant accounts in the same bank. And so, which is a bad idea. If you get merchant accounts, have them in different banks. That's a story for the day. But I had 9 merchant accounts in one bank, and literally in one day, they turned them all off. And so we couldn't process money. Like, nothing could happen. Our sales guys were like, I'm trying to run someone's card. Like, people wanted to give us money, but they couldn't. And, you have 100 employees, you have payroll coming every 14 days. It's like that stress. And I remember calling the credit card company, and it was, this is like 2010, I think. And there was this huge merchant crackdown where Visa and MasterCard, anyone who was doing any kind of like continuity offers, they just shut them all down. So it wasn't just me, it was like hundreds and hundreds of people all got shut down the same day. And I remember calling the merchant account, and I couldn't get a hold of them for like 2 or 3 hours. Finally got a hold of me. I was like, I got shut down. What's happening? And they're like, if you got shut down, it means that, you're never going to process again. The guy like hung up on me. I was like, what? And it was just like the scariest thing. And so, you know, and then my whole team's freaking out. I was like, hey, everyone go home tonight, come back tomorrow, we'll have a plan. So everyone goes home, and then next day come back. I'm like, I have no plan. Like, I was like, I don't know what to do. Like, tell people to send us checks, or like, I don't know, send, you know, try to figure out everything. And what's crazy is like, anyway, I thought everyone on my team was like going to be like, we're here together, we're going to win this thing. And what's crazy is like, as soon as people found out that there might not have a check, or maybe the check could be or something, they all just started leaving. And like 40, 50, 60 people who I thought were like my friends just left and disappeared. And then other people, and like even like family members who like just walked out on me. And it was like the weirdest thing. And then we had a group of people who stayed behind, and I still didn't have money to pay for them, but I'd come back. And so every day I'd wake up in the morning, and the first thing I do is I just sell myself on like, okay, we're going to do this. We got, you know, like sell myself, and I go in the office and I meet everyone together, and I have to like sell all of them. I'm like, this is going to work. We're going to try, you know, we tried a new thing. We tried so many things. And it was like almost a year of that. Like we would open a new merchant account, we'd process a bunch of money, but we'd process too much too fast, and they would freeze our account and hold the money for 180 days. And like, it was just chaos. Like we could not get a break. And it took about a year of going through that, kept getting worse and worse and worse. And then at the end of the year, it was the next December, January. I remember my dad, who he wasn't doing my books, but he was watching my bookkeeper was doing the books. He called me or sent me an email, and he was like, hey, I reviewed the books, and it turns out your bookkeeper has not paid payroll taxes in the last 12 months. He's like, she's been hiding it. You guys didn't have the money, so she didn't pay the taxes. And he's like, you understand, like, if you don't pay payroll tax, it's not like a fine. It's like they put you in jail for that, Russell. And I was like, what? I'm like, well, how much is our payroll tax? And he was like, I can't remember. It was like a couple $100,000. He's like, if you don't pay this soon, he's like, you could go to jail. And I'm like, I don't have a couple $100,000. Like, we're out of money. And I remember the next day we had a call center of like 40, 50 sales guys. They all just walked out the next day. They all quit. They mass quit together. So I lost my ability to generate money. I had no way to process money, and I owed $200,000. I was going to go to jail. And I was like, I want to quit, but I can't because I'll go to jail. So it's like, all right. And so it was like this grind of coming back. Okay, what do we got to do different? Like innovate. How do we change this? What do we got to do different? And just every single day. And it's crazy because like, I remember going like, it was like probably the most painful and scary time of my life. In fact, I remember waking up one morning and like just kind of lingering at my house, like not wanting to go to the office. And my wife saw me, and she could tell like I was not doing well. And I just remember she grabbed me and like pulled me down to the ground, to our knees. And she's like, we need to pray. Like, we need to ask for help. And I was like, okay. And so I remember us praying, and just like, I don't know what to do. I'm out of options. I've tried everything, you know, and like, I need guidance. I need help. And I remember that was the first time I was willing to like humble myself enough. And then it was go back to the office today and sell everybody else. And like, we're going to make this work. And like, we kept doing it. But what's crazy is like, it's one of those things like in the moment of pain is like always like the hardest time. But then looking back, you realize that was actually God taking you down a very certain path, you know? Because it's crazy because of that, because we lost everything, because we shut everything down, we had to shrink to this little tiny office, like 5 or 6 of us. From there, we're trying to figure out how to make money just to pay off the thing. From there, like I was doing different webinars every week, like rewriting my webinar, getting better and better. And eventually we had a webinar that paid off all the taxes. I was like, I'm not going to jail, woohoo. And then I was like, okay, now we got to create another offer. And we went through that, but it was in that pain, like that's where I met Todd Dickerson.
Mm-hmm.
Like I would never have met him otherwise. And he became my partner. He's the one who built ClickFunnels. And like all these amazing blessings came because of that darkness that I had to go through. And looking back now, it's like, even though that was like the most painful, stressful time of my life, it also was the catalyst for everything we built since then. And so, anyway, that's kind of what basically kind of what I had to go through. It's definitely a lot longer story, but those are kind of the key points. But it was tough. I think, reframing that in my head, and hopefully for anyone else who's going through the hard times, of like, it's just a cycle. And like, we all go through cycles in entrepreneurship. And it's okay to, it's okay. And just know that like, if you keep showing up and keep trying, like, you'll be directed in the path that you're supposed to go on, and the right people will show up, the right things will show up, even though it may seem hopeless at times. If you keep at it, you never know what's going to happen. So anyway.
That's an incredible story. And I can listen to it all day long, Russell, like seriously, because you can feel it. Like, I don't know what I would do. I would probably not sleep at night, and then you can't get up in the morning, and then it's like a downhill spiral. Yeah. In the venture world, as I was investing in companies, like we call it the near-death experience, right? Like every founder has to go through what we call a near-death experience, because only then you know that they can actually go through it and actually continue.
Cool.
And every single one will have that. And the way I look at it in Leap Academy is this is the muscle you have to build in order to become the leader that you're meant to be. And I think this is why you became more creative. This is why, this is what catapult all the rest. So I do want to hear that story, because it's a beautiful story of how you met Todd, and how ClickFunnels was born. I have to hear that.
Yeah. So in that whole time, when everything's falling apart, and we're trying different offers and different things. I remember I went to this site called flippa.com, and it's like people who are selling their businesses and stuff. And I went to it. I remember there was a site for sale. It was called championsound.com. And I was like, and it was an email text message autoresponder for bands. And I was like, oh, that could be our bit. And I don't know if I didn't want to be selling to bands, but I'm like, if I bought the email text message autoresponder, I could make a version for chiropractors and a version for dentists. And like, that was kind of the big idea. And so I took, the rest of the money I had plus borrowing money to go buy this company. We buy the company. They tried to transfer it over to our servers. And the guy who's transferring it's like your servers are Linux. We need Ruby on Rails. And I'm like, what does that mean? It's like, it's a different platform. I'm like, what are you even talking about? And so I had to buy this other server. They installed it. And then the couple guys I knew, the dev guys, like, we don't know how to, it's like, that's like Chinese. I don't know how to speak Chinese. I can't fix it. I'm like, but like, this is and so we tried 3 or 4 times to hire people to do Ruby on Rails, which was a brand new language at the time. And they couldn't fix it. And I remember for about a month, we were trying to make this thing work. And finally it was like, I just had to give up. And so like, I remember just being sick to my stomach because like that was all the money we had, and I just burned it on a stupid idea that it wasn't going to work. And I remember that day I emailed the server company and told them to shut down the servers because we can't afford to keep paying for it. And as I was like packing my bags, I was walking out of the office, I felt this really weird impression, and it was like, email your list to find someone who knows Ruby on Rails who can help you. I was like, I had this tiny little email list at the time of people trying to start businesses. I'm like, there's no Ruby on Rails developers, like. But I felt that impression. So I walked back in, turned my computer back on, sent an email to my list. And in fact, it's funny, like Todd and I, we found the email. It's kind of crazy, but I sent it out saying like, I'm looking for a partner. If you know Ruby on Rails, message me back. And I sent this out to my list, went home that night. And then that night, checked my email and I get this email back from this guy named Todd. And he's like, I'm a Ruby on Rails developer. He's like, I've been like semi-retired for the last 3 or 4 years. I got a side business that's making pretty good money, but yeah, I'm looking for partnership opportunities. So I just sent him a login to the server. I'm like, here's the login. It doesn't work. Can you fix it? And then and that was kind of it. So the next morning I wake up and he's like, all right, I logged in. He's like, I fixed this, and this. I added this. They're missing this. They should do this. I'm like, all this stuff. And I was like, whoa, okay, cool. And then that's how we met each other. And then for the next year, we started working together, and I didn't have money to pay him, and he knew that, but I was like, we kept talking about like, well, someday we'll partner on something, it'll be cool. So he just kept helping on these different offers. That webinar that I did that paid off all the debt, he helped me to build the webinar platform that did that webinar. So he was like helping on all these different pieces. I'm like, I can't pay you yet because I got to pay off the IRS. So I was like, no worries. So I took all the money he made. I didn't pay him. I paid off the IRS, and we, it's just, but for a year, he didn't once ask me for money. He just like showed up every day, was working full days. He'd fly to Boise, we'd work on projects together, and never asked for money ever. And in fact, I remember about a year into the relationship, one day he was in Boise, and I looked over his shoulder at his email, and there are all these like job offers for Ruby on Rails developers were in his inbox. And Ruby on Rails, especially then, was a really rare language, so there wasn't many people. And I was like, what are those? He's like, oh, just people trying to recruit me. I'm like, how much are they, what are they paying you? And he pulled up a couple, and they were like $500,000 a year starting salaries for these different roles. I was like, you should take that. Like, I'll never be able to pay you that much. He's like, no, I don't want to work for those guys. He's like, I want to build something cool. And so for the next year or so, we're trying different projects, having like minimal success on little things here and there. But we kept building these funnels. And then one day he was like, we should, the full story, it was the day that Lead Pages got, I think they got $5 million in funding. And he was flying to Boise that day. So that morning he woke up, he saw the Lead Pages got $5 million in funding. He forwarded me the article, and then he was flying to Boise. I wake up in the morning, I see the article. I'm like, Lead Pages? I'm like, that's like the most simple software ever. And by the time he gets to Boise, he's like, I can build Lead Pages today. We could launch it tonight. Like, let's build it. I'm like, let's do it. Like so excited. So, and then he asked the question before, he's like, well, if I'm going to build Lead Pages, do you want to add any other features? I was like, oh yeah, I'd love if you could do a sales letter and an upsell. And all of a sudden, like, we spent the whole week in front of a whiteboard mapping out what eventually became ClickFunnels. And we kept mapping out, like, what if we did this, then it did this? And like, we mapped out this whole thing. There was like this dream of like, it'd be the coolest thing in the world if we could build this. And I remember we had this domain, it was clickfusion.com, and we'd launched like 3 different things off ClickFusion. All of them had failed. And I remember we got down, I was like, okay, we're gonna call this thing ClickFusion. He's like, no, that domain, that's jinxed. Like everything we do in ClickFusion fails. We can't call it that. I'm like, what else are we gonna call it? And he's like, well, it's like, it builds funnels. So we call it ClickFunnels. And so I'm like, so we looked and the domain name was available. So we bought it. I'm like, hey, it's called ClickFunnels. And then that day I was driving him back to the airport. He was gonna fly back home. And I remember as we were getting to the airport, he told me, he's like, hey, if we do this, I don't want to do this as like your employee. I want to do this as your partner. And for me, like I'd been an entrepreneur for a decade of my life. I'd never had partners. I was scared I was just like, I didn't want to. And I was just like, I remember sitting there for a second and then just felt impressed. I was like, okay, let's be partners on this. And I told people this before, like outside of marrying my wife, like that was the best decision I've ever made in my life, was partnering with Todd. And he flew home. He spent the next 8 months building what became ClickFunnels by himself. And then we came back, we ended up bringing another partner who built the editor and the UI. And we launched ClickFunnels a decade ago now. And it was the thing that took off and changed my life, changed his life, changed, millions of people's lives around the world now. And that's kind of the ClickFunnels story.
Oh my God. And you do, and I think what's beautiful is not just that it changed your, what you created, it's what you're making possible for so many people, and the ripple that creates, because they're creating these amazing things that then have this mega impact on millions or billions, or I don't even know, which must be like the best feeling in the world.
It's so cool. I mean, I think anytime you do business, like initially you do it, I don't know, I think initially we do it for ourselves. Like, I want to start a business, I want to make some money. And then you start making money, and then really quick that feels shallow. You're like, that's not what I was expecting. And then for me, it's like when we started having our students, like people who are users, have success, that's when it was like, whoa, that feels so much, it feels so much better. In fact, I thought about this, like when I was a wrestler, I love wrestling. Getting my hand raised was like the best feeling in the world. And then when my kids got to be wrestling age, one of my sons' name's Bowen. The very first year of wrestling, he would go to practice and matches, and he lost every match the whole year. He was like, it was so devastating. He had a twin brother who was winning all his matches. He just lost he lost every single match. And we tried so hard and worked so hard with him. And then the very last match of the season, he actually won. I remember getting his hand raised and he was jumping around. And like, I was like, nothing has ever felt better than watching him get his hand raised. That was the best feeling, like so much better than me winning a match than watching him win it. And it's the same thing, like for me, like when I launch a funnel, it makes a bunch of money. It's like, hey, that's really cool. But I see some of our students do it and they launch it and they win a 2 Comma Club award, and they have success or whatever. Like, that feels so much better. It's so addicting. In fact, people always ask me, why are you still doing this 10 years later? Like, you could have retired, 10 times ago. I'm like, there's something about it, man. When somebody takes the frameworks and the software and they launch it and like, you see it change their life, it's like, that was worth, like, that's the most, addicting feeling in the world. And so, it's the best feeling watching people have success with it. It's been so fulfilling and so much fun.
And like you said, you continue for a decade now. And I think what's interesting to see is also to view you as how you reinvent yourself, even within this, even within ClickFunnels, how you reinvent yourself, first of all, as a leader, that's somebody that can take something to this mega success, because I'm sure that needed like a whole different mindset of money and leadership. And so first of all, take us a little bit to like, how do you scale from 0 to 100 million? Like I just bragged to you that we're one of the fastest growing companies, but then after, hearing you guys, like, I'm like, I can't even say that. So how do you grow fast enough to be able to absorb that level of leadership and money risks and everything that comes with it?
Oh man, it is like, it's crazy. It's like, I always tell people, I'm like, I feel like God like will give you something. He wants to test your capacity, right? So he'll give you something and like, what's going to happen? And then like, it's really heavy. It's like lifting weights, right? The capacity is really heavy, but then you get stronger because of it. And then you get something more, it's harder, and then you get stronger because of it. And I look at like, even the challenges that we deal with today, I'm like, 10 years ago, those would have destroyed me, right? But it's like everything, it's like when you have a kid, right? Like I've got teenagers now that are 18, and like, when they're born though, it's like there's little problems, they get a little bigger, but over time you grow with it. And I think when we launched ClickFunnels, it was so fast and furious. And I remember like, I don't know, there's just so many things happening that you don't know how to react. You're trying to figure them out, and like, but it builds that capacity for the next thing. And one of the best examples is The very first year of ClickFunnels, we were a year into it, and I remember when Todd built ClickFunnels, he was like, "Hey, the way I built it, it'll work for about 10,000 members or so, and then when it gets bigger, we're gonna have to change stuff." And I was like, "I don't know what that means, but okay." So we launched it, and it starts growing like crazy. We were it was interesting. All the other software companies we watched, they were growing by taking on VC money and then like using that to grow. And for us, we didn't have that. So we just we would build funnels and use those. And so we got really good at drinking our own Kool-Aid and building funnels to grow ClickFunnels. And anyway, it grew really, really rapidly. And I remember, 8 or 9 months in, it kept like having, like we'd just go out for an hour or come back in, or we'd go out for like 10 minutes and back in. And it's just like, why does it keep crashing? Like what? And like, and Todd's, it's just Todd by himself. Todd and Dylan are two partners. Like, they're coding it. And like it goes down again, like, they're fixing it. And like it's got bigger and bigger, kept happening more and more often. And I remember it was in Chicago speaking at Dan Kennedy event. And right before I was supposed to speak, it was down. And I called Todd, I'm like, what's gonna happen? He's like, I'm working on it. And I'm going on stage selling ClickFunnels, knowing that it's down. I'm just like, this is like so embarrassed. So I'm doing the thing and I come back up and finally gets it back up before we're done. But then the next week I'm flying to London. So I'm flying to London to go speak at this event, and the promoter invited my wife, my kids and stuff. So we're flying, overseas. And so we're up in the air for however many, 15 hours. And when we land, you have to hook the SIM card into your phone or whatever back then. So I put a SIM card in, and all of a sudden my phone starts like texts, messages, Voxers, Skypes, like every messaging platform, my phone's just blowing up. And these are people who are angry. Like, I'm going to kill you, Russell. You owe me money. Like it was insane. I'm like, what is happening? So finally I called Todd, what's happening? And all I remember he said that it was down. He's like, and if I'm able to get it back up. And I was like, what? Like if, like, are you saying this is not something like, and I was my heart dropped and I was like, what do we do? Like we at that time been down like 2 or 3 hours and people are upset. All of our customers, like, I don't know what to do. Like I'm a first time CEO, and so I take my wife, my kids to the hotel, and we had 2 rooms. So I'm like, Clark, can you take all the kids and I need to be in the room for a minute by myself. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, what do I do? And like every instinct in me wanted to hide and just like hide, but I was like, we're down. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know when we're going to back up. And so I remember we had this little Facebook group at the time. I remember going live in that Facebook group, and I was like, hey, we're down, and I don't know why, and this is not acceptable. This isn't like all my business are down, all your business are down. Like we're hoping to fix it. We're trying all these things, and like I was just very vulnerable and very like I told him the truth, and like I didn't try to hide it or try to justify. I'm like this is not good. This is our fault. I'm so sorry. We're gonna figure this out. And because I was like upfront and didn't try to hide it. It was really interesting because like the community rallied behind us, and there were a lot of mad people, obviously, but as a whole, everyone's like, no worries, like we got you, we're all praying for you, all these sorts of stuff. And anyway, a really long story short, well, yeah, like it took 8 hours, and in 8 hours they had to rebuild the database on this other place, and they copied everything over, and somehow miraculously in 8 hours they got it back up live. And it had been rebuilt on this new platform which is way more stable. And what's crazy is like, I was assuming we'd lose half our members or most, I thought everyone was going to leave us. And what's crazy, look at the daily cancellations, like it didn't change. Like it was just almost nothing had happened. And that it drew the community closer to me and to us and everything. And then from there, we just kind of made that like a standard. Like, hey, when things are happening, we're going to be vulnerable. We'll tell people about it because obviously people respected that and they needed that. So those are one of those things like, I don't know, you don't learn that stuff. It's just in the moment, it's like, what's the decision? And that time I made the right decision. Tons of times I made the wrong decision. You learn the other way too. Like that was stupid. I should not have done that, but it's like, that's this whole game. Like you get thrown into the fire, and especially as you're going through right now, you guys are growing like crazy, right? You feel it's like these problems pop up, like what's happening? Like, for us people, like when ClickFunnels started growing, like everyone's building their sites on there, but what's crazy is like, I don't know, I can't monitor 10,000 people's sites or 100,000 people's sites. So we have people like doing illegal stuff, and like we're getting letters from the FBI because we're hosting websites. Like, why are you hosting these things? I remember Taylor Swift sent us a huge lawsuit suing us because someone was selling Taylor Swift merchandise on their site. And like, I'm getting these things in the mail. I'm like, I don't am I going to jail? I don't even know. I don't know who these people are. We're trying to find their sites and turn them off and apologize to the FBI and like all these things. Like, so it's like, but you just keep showing up and going through it. And eventually, like you get thicker skin and you get capacity, and they're like, okay, now we can handle these kind of problems, and you get things in place. But it's not something you can prepare for. Like you got to jump into the fire, and by doing that, like God will qualify you. He always says like He doesn't call the qualified; He qualifies the call. Right? Like you jump out there, and by just being in the storm, that's how you learn the things. And but that's why I love entrepreneurship. Like one of my friends, Steve Larson, said it's the greatest personal development course in the world is being an entrepreneur, because you jump out there and it's like, you get to learn so much in such a short period of time. And, but then at the end of the day, like, man, like what a great growth tool. Like how much do you grow by doing that versus anything else in the world? You know what I mean? Like,
oh my God. I mean, it's yeah. I mean, it's definitely a roller coaster, and it's endless what you can learn. I mean, I think except for the Air Force, I think this and the Air Force were probably my biggest. And I'm like, why did I spend so much time in the university when, you know? Anyway,
learn way more doing this. Yeah.
I mean, I'm like, what did I do there? But so one of the beautiful stories I think also that you share is, and I shared it a little bit with you. You talk about the Dream 100, and you talk a little bit about, which really impacted me, and I shared that earlier. And you kind of talk a little bit about how I kind of went ahead and, created this amazing relationship with Tony Robbins, and also how that helped you with some really interesting decisions for yourself with ClickFunnels and, leading it. So can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, there's so many stories around that one. The concept of Dream 100, as you know, was like when we launched ClickFunnels, I'm like we can go out there and try to get every single customer on our own, but there's already people who've already congregated those customers together. It's like if we can build relationships with them and they promote it to the list, one person says yes, they might promote it to 100 or 1,000 or 100,000 people, right? So we started building these relationships. And so one of the ones early in my career I started building was Tony Robbins, and we just for a decade, I was serving him and every time he'd ask for something, I'd jump on and jump a call with his team, like help him through things. And when our Funnel Hacking Live event came out, our third Funnel Hacking Live, he came in and was a speaker, which was like the craziest thing in the world for me. And so that's kind of how it started. We built that relationship, but I was like very careful never to ask him for anything. I was like, I'm gonna show up and serve him and keep serving him. And eventually something cool will happen from it. And I remember that him and Dean Graciosi were gonna launch a company, and it was about masterminds and stuff. So I remember I went and I bought, we bought mastermind.com for, I think I spent like $600,000 on it. And I gave it to him as a gift. Like, here you go. Hope you guys use this for your business. And they're like, what? And then they actually made me a partner. So we were a partner in that company together for a couple of years. What was cool about it is when they launched it, we would help promote every single year. And the affiliate prize was like, you get to go to these retreats with Tony Robbins. The very first one was in Fiji. And it was like, you get to come to Tony's resort in Fiji, and then you get to be in this mastermind. You can ask Tony any question you want. And it is cool. In fact, we've done it, I think I've done it 4 or 5 years now. I have a video of each one. We filmed and captured and made these really cool YouTube videos. But so I flew out to Fiji, my wife and I, and we were in this mastermind. And it was this time in my life where I was like, ClickFunnels is growing, but I don't know what to do. And like, who else, like, who do you ask questions like that? I don't have people in my world that, my family that have done this kind of thing. And so it was kind of cool to have a chance to ask them a question. Every year I get asked them a different question. That first year, the question was like, what do I do? Do I sell the company? Do I not? Like, what does that look like? And I remember he said, he's like, why would you sell the company? You love funnels more than anyone in the world. He's like, when someone says the world ClickFunnels are fun, like you light up, like you're going crazy about it. And he's like, selling something sounds exciting in the moment, but he's like, if you don't have the next thing that you're passionate about, you'll end up unfulfilled and not happy. And he's like, instead of selling it, what if you shifted how it was, and you shifted from you being the CEO and the person running it to like you go on the board and like, give yourself a job inside the company that you're passionate about, like for me, building funnels, and then hire someone to be the one in charge. So you don't have to be that person. It never really crossed my mind. I was like, huh. And so, after that, it's the first time I went and we actually found someone. It was my partner, Dave Woodward. He became the CEO of the company. He was able to take those things on and run it. And I got a chance to focus on stuff I love doing, And it was just, it was super cool advice. And like I said, every year I go back and I get asked Tony another question about some aspect of my life or the business. And it's been really special, spending time with him and getting to know him, and then getting feedback directly from him. You know what I mean? Like someone who's influenced so many people, and be able to say like, here's where I'm stuck again. Like, how do I get out of this conundrum I got myself into, And anyways, pretty cool.
It's an incredible story. And again, I'll urge people, if you're listening to this, I think this is a video that really did impact me. I think you call it Dream 100, but I think first of all, just the patience that you have in terms of, yes, I want everything yesterday. That's who I am, right? And it's not going to happen yesterday. It's not going to happen tomorrow either. So building that relationship takes time. Yeah. And also just a lot about giving and finding the wins for them. Because again, there's at some point, John Maxwell calls it the people's pile. There's a big people's pile with Tony Robbins. I told you, for me, it was Richard Branson. Like, there's a big people pile. So we need to somehow learn how to break that people pile to create that connection.
Yeah.
And I think the idea of spending $600,000 was just like mesmerizing for me. But seriously, like the patience together with the investment, because that's exactly what I've done with Richard Branson to some extent, just not, at that level. And I think that just taught me so much. So first of all, thank you.
Oh, yeah. I think it's interesting. People like to do business with people they like. So it's like, how do we build an actual relationship? And I'm sure you get this as well. I get it all the time where it's like, people will come into my world and you can tell from the get-go they're there for like something for them. And I don't know. So like for me, it's like I'm very guarded now. It's hard to get through my gatekeepers because it's just like some people in my life who come to me, it's like they always have an ulterior motive. And so for me, it's like I never want to be the guy who's someone gets that feeling. So I'm like, how do I just show up and just like literally figure out how to be their friend? How can I help them? And I was like, and then from that's when the best stuff happens anyway, right? But it's not coming in like, what can I take from this person? It's like, what can I get from this person? And hopefully something cool happens. If not, I'm cool with that too. But like, and I think that's the key. And everyone's looking for like the short term, like the hit, the win really quick. This is going to be the thing versus like, there's a book called Dig Your Well Before You're Thirsty. It's that. It's like digging your well, like just building a relationship. Like whenever I talk about Dream 100, people are like, so when do I start the Dream 100 process? I'm like, yesterday. Go start start building relationships. Like it's your business become infinitely better. Like if I lost everything tomorrow, within 30 days, I'd be back on top. I call a dozen people who I got great relationships with and it'd be fine. Like I don't have fear of that anymore because I've built deep relationships with a lot of different people. I think that's what people are missing is they're looking for this, like, I'm going to get something from this person, therefore I'm going to do this thing. And it's just like, that's not how you win in the long term. Maybe in the short term, you may trick someone or get something out of it. But the long term is like putting in the effort, putting in the time, and I think that's the key that most people miss.
I love that you said that. I mean, we all, I'm sure you're getting 1,000. Hey, can you make me this introduction to the president of Starbucks or Shopify? No. Like, can we move on? Like, I don't know you. So you're right. It's really about like, how do you see things? But I think again, it's that give mentality. How do you find win-wins for them? Because if there is no win, it's not going to make sense. And I think also your ability to put yourself in a room with people who are just so smart that will force you to leap, if you will, right? No pun intended, right? Like force you to just take yourself forward.
I remember, sorry.
Go for it.
So one of the very first events I went to, it was Armin Morin's big seminar. And I was there and I met this other kid. I can't remember his name now. He had an interesting name, but I remember we were about the same age. He might have been a year older than me. And I remember Armin made an offer. It was like a $25,000 mastermind. And the kid ran in the back and he bought it. And he came back. I was like, first off, how do you have $25,000 to buy that? I couldn't comprehend that. But I was like, why would you buy that? And he told me something that was so simple and so powerful. He's like, there's two ways to get to the top, Russell. You can work your way in or you can buy your way in. He's like, I just bought my way in. He's like, now I'm in the room. I have a relationship. I get to know these people. And like, he's like, that's worth $25,000 every day of the week. And for me, I was like, oh my gosh, I was like, okay, what's it going to teach me for this worth 25? I was trying to figure that out. And it's like, no, like how do you get in the room? Like with the people, like you can work your way in, which takes a lot of time, or just buy your way in. And after I learned that from him, I was like, okay, same thing. Like, how do I buy my way in? Like for the Tony thing, like I knew that the affiliate prize was to go and to be in Fiji with him. Like I couldn't buy that. There was no amount of money. So I had to work my way in, and so like I went and I promoted and we sold a bunch of stuff to get in that room. Like I need to figure out other times, in fact, here's a funny Richard Branson story you probably don't know about me. Like 18 years ago, he did him and his mom did an event called the Rock the Casbah. And somehow I got invited to the Rock the Casbah event, which was weird. I'm in this room with like all these famous people and entrepreneurs, and they were doing an auction. And during the auction, they're bidding a bunch of stuff. And one of the auction items was to get your name on the side of a Virgin airplane. I was like, that would be awesome. And so I started bidding on that. And I started bidding. And during this bidding war, me and Dean Graziosi ended up getting in a bidding war over this plane. And we're going back and forth and back and forth. And then, and eventually I stopped at 45,000 and Dean bid 50. I was like, I'm out. My wife's like, stop raising your hand. So I stopped. And then Branson comes on stage. He's like, who was it at 45,000? If you do 50, I'll put your name on a plane too. And I was like, yeah. And so he came on stage. He got pictures with me and Dean and Richard Branson and all this stuff. And my on the side of one of the planes, it says .com secrets air to this day because of that. But like, I can't remember I'm going with the story other than like, that's how I got to know Dean. Like eventually I met Dean a year later or something. And it was kind of like this thing's like, who's this guy? And I was like, hey, you don't probably remember me, but do you remember this? And I showed him the picture of him on stage with the plane. I was like, that's me. He's like, you're the guy I got the bidding war with. And it was like instant friends because of that, but opened up all these different doors. And anyway, so there's a random story.
Oh my God. I love that story. Oh, this is so good. Again, I love that sentence, like work or crawl your way or buy your way. I just love that.
Yeah.
Incredible. Maybe one last, maybe a couple more questions. I don't know if you have a hard stop, but I can talk to you forever, but give me a second. You are pretty open, if that's okay to go there for a second. You are pretty open about something that usually nobody is. It's your difficulty to have children. And the reason why I would love to go there for a second is because I think this is like, for a lot of people, one of the hardest times in their life, and nobody can talk about it. Do you mind sharing it a little bit, Russell?
Yeah, for sure. It's been a little while now that we got,
I know.
but yeah.
I know. You started me with the 18-year-olds. Yes.
I know, it's crazy. It's such a blur. Yeah. But after my wife and I got married, we tried to get pregnant. We weren't able to and my wife's older than me. My wife's 6 years older than me. And so, she had anxiety anyway of like, wants to have babies before she's too old and stuff like that. And so, yeah, we just weren't able to get pregnant and we didn't know what to do. And it's interesting because, she was actually watching Oprah, and on Oprah, there was a doctor who was like a fertility doctor who happened to live in Boise, Idaho. I remember she called me that day from work and she's like, I just watched this thing. There's a fertility doctor. He lives in Boise, Idaho. I'm like, what? This is crazy. And so we booked the thing and we went in there. And I remember first month went through the whole process, took the shots, do all the, everything step by step. And then nothing happened. In the second month, and he went through the whole process, nothing happened. And then the third month, it was actually the same month I was graduating from college. Because I remember we went through the whole process, we did the test. And then that day, my family and her family were coming in because I had graduation the next day. So they were all driving in. And about 2 minutes before they pulled into the driveway, Clem was outside getting the yard ready or whatever. And the phone rings, I pick it up. And the nurse is like, hey, congratulations, you guys are pregnant. I'm like, what? And I walk out to Colette and I was like, you're pregnant. She's like, what? She starts crying. She wouldn't believe it. And she's like, and all of a sudden we're sitting in the front porch just bawling our eyes out. And all of a sudden all the cars drive of our family. She's like, don't tell anyone. I'm like, what? She's like, don't tell anyone. I'm like, oh, so we went inside and like everyone came in and we're like just tears in our face. We're trying to have this conversation, like smiling. And finally she looks at me. She's like, okay, let's tell him. I'm like, Colette's pregnant. Anyway. But it's interesting is like, it's funny because like I've shared that story and people are like, why would you share that story? It has nothing to do with business. And I remember when I would, at that time I'd go to, or after that was my business started, I would go speak at events and I would always tell I would tell my wrestling stories. I tell stories about my business, stuff like that. And it was just and it was weird because when I would sell something, like people would buy from me, usually like athletes and people who were very similar to me, right? And I remember for some reason, one of them I'm talking and all of a sudden like I just feel this impression to tell the story about like my kids. And I was like, what? Why? Like, and I don't know, I start telling the story and I get emotional on stage. I'm crying and it's just talking about how grateful I was for that doctor who was willing to like put themselves out there to like get on like the Oprah show. It's not easy to get on. Like they go out there to get themselves on Oprah so that like, because their message changed my life and like how that's why I love entrepreneurs. Cause like I've seen what one, like everything good in my life came because some entrepreneur risked everything to figure out how to like change someone's life. And so for me, it's like, that's been my mission. So I shared that and I was like bawling and I tell the whole story. And then at the end of that event, it was crazy seeing the people that bought from me. They were like, the athletes still bought from me. Now it's like wives and mothers and families that are buying my stuff. And I was like, how fascinating. Like when you're willing to like, to share parts of yourself that most people aren't willing to share. What's crazy about that is it opens you up where like now people, like they will connect with you at different levels. Cause like, wow, that person went through what I had to go through, or like, what I'm going through right now or something. And you're able to bring people into your world. And I think, for anyone listening, like one of the most powerful things you can do is like to tell those things in your life that are harder, that may not make sense. But when you do that, like, that's how you build actual connection with your audience. When you're willing to share stuff that most people won't. It comes away, everyone wants to share the highlight reel. And it's like, talk about the stuff that's real. And then that's when people will come to you. And so, yeah, that's why I share that story. Cause again, for me, it's like, that's why I do what I do. Cause I know what one entrepreneur can do, how they change my life. And if I can help one other entrepreneur help change someone else's life, like, what gets better than that? Nothing. It's the best.
That's incredible. And I think that is really, really, really inspiring to hear your level of authenticity and just honesty, because I think it is, I think it's missing in a lot of the leadership that we see today. But I also understand that it's easier to tell the stories from the scars, not from the wounds.
Yeah.
So when it's really, really, really open, it's hard. You
sure.
need to sometimes let it scar a little bit. So maybe based on everything, and again, you write a ton of books. I have one here. I have trillion others on my Audible. Like, I mean, first of all, how do you do it all? And what would be an advice to people who are listening or to your younger self, like based on all of it?
Oh man. Well, I'm able to do it all because I've got a great support network and team around me. To be able to do what we're doing at scale, like, I've got an amazing wife at home who takes care of the kids, who makes sure that the home's great. I have an amazing team here in the office that helps support me. I had a mentor when I first got started who said something so powerful. He's like, there's two types of people in the world. There's people who are really good at starting things and people who are really good at finishing things. Like he said, figure out who you are and then surround yourself with the opposite. And I was like, I'm really good at starting things. I'm really bad at finishing things. And so if you look at my company, there's me who starts stuff and I got 399 other people who are just finishing the projects behind me. And so for me, it's like, I get to work on the stuff I'm most passionate about, but I know that if I'm going to write a book or I'm gonna do something, it's like, I got to cut time out from other things. Like I got to make sure the team's in place. Okay, everyone's in place. Cool. I'm going to go deep. I'm going to spend the next 90 days. I got to work on this project over here. Like right now we're in the middle of a big project. And so everyone's blocking and tackling so I can focus on getting it all done. Because in a week from today, actually, we're rolling out this new offer. So it's like, that's what we're all encompassed on. But it's just having a really good team of people around you who also believe in the mission, who are capable, who can, pick up the reins around you so that you can do the things. And then I think it's really focusing on what are the biggest, the biggest leverage impact points that you can do in your business, right? For me, it's like, there's a lot of people that can do operations, they can do meetings, they can be a CEO, but there's only one person that can write my book, right? It's me. So it's like, so one person can do the video. It's got to be me. Like those are the pieces that are unique to me, like my, my unique skill. And I think for everyone, it's like understanding what your unique abilities are and figuring out how to build a team around you so you can focus on your unique abilities and your team can focus on their unique abilities. And when you can do that, everyone's like focusing on the unique abilities, that's when things can blow up and things can grow and things can scale. It's when you're not doing your unique ability, other people aren't doing theirs, it just feels hard, it's not fun, and it's just like miserable. But when you get it where everything's going the right direction, then it's exciting, it's fun. Like everyone enjoys what they're doing versus, the other side. And so I think for me, it's just having an amazing support network and then trying to double down on the things that are your unique ability that no one else can do that you can do. And then, like I said, leverage impact. Like for me, it's like of all the things, like we've launched hundreds of courses and funnels and offers and events and everything. But like for me, the things that have made me the most money had the most lasting impact. Like ClickFunnels for sure, my books for sure. People don't come to me like, Russell, I bought your course 4 years ago and changed my life. And no one ever says that. They always say, I read your book and it changed my life. Like, so for me, like books are such high leverage, high impact. Like I'm willing to spend a lot of energy there because I see the results that come on the backside of those more than almost anything else I do. So that's why I love doing them. Even though I'm in the middle of a book right now, I've been spending almost 4 years on it. It's painful. It's like giving birth to a really fat, overweight baby, but it's like, I know when it's done, it'll be like the next thing that people tell me is the thing that changed their life. So it's like I keep birthing this book.
Well, I'll be reading it for sure because I read every single one. But seriously, Russell, anything else that you would want our listeners to hear about you or about?
I think the last thing I'd say, like a lot of people struggle in business because they're trying to figure out how to make money. And like, I always tell my audience, I'm like, if you're coming to my world or your world, like if you're in this business, like my guess is that it's not just because you want to make money, it's because you've heard what my friend Alex Sharfin calls it the call to contribution. Like I want to contribute more. I want to you feel that call to contribution. And I'm a big believer, like if you felt that call, it's not just like some magic feeling or like butterfly. Like I believe that we're all called of God, right? That we're all called to serve a certain specific group of people. And it's based on like, yes, our talents and our things we're good at, but also like the things you've gone through, like the pain, the scars, the trials, the frustration, the stuff you had to go through, you overcame. And because you overcame that, you know how to do that, right? And so the call to contribution is typically like you went through a whole bunch and you become something great. You can change other people's lives. You've been called to serve this group of people because of what you've gone through. And like, for me, when I realized that's what it was, when it shifted for me, like thinking how to make money to like, I feel like God's called me to serve this group of people. Like it changes everything. Then it's easy to get through the ups and the downs and the hard stuff because you're like, these are the people's lives I'm supposed to be changing. And I think, for the final things for people is just if you lean into that and realize that it's not just you trying to make money, but it's like there's something bigger that you're striving towards someone's life, you're changing. It changes the dynamics of it. It makes the business fun. It makes it so that during the hard days, the hard times, like you can overcome those things. I think when you make that shift mentally, like everything else changes for you.
I totally agree, Russell. This was so inspiring, and I could probably talk to you for hours. Thank you so much for everything.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. It's fun watching what you're doing, and I'm proud of how fast you're growing. It's so exciting to see. I love watching entrepreneurs have success. It's the best.
Thank you so much. More episodes that you're going to love are right around the corner, so definitely make sure to click the like button and subscribe to our channel. Also, who in your life should see this today? Do share this with them. This will inspire and help those you care about and helps us continue to bring amazing guests. And I will see you there.